Whoa.
Good evening, ladies. An extraordinary meeting of art. And the
Extraordinary, 10 years?
Yes.
1,500 pages, why?
Well, quite. I often ask myself, yes. Well, there is a serious answer, I think. I'm very concerned sorry to lower the tone, but I'm very concerned, as I imagine a lot of people here are, about the way the world is going. And before I go, I wanted to say something I thought was relevant about it from my experience of people and their brains. I think the things that, I would point to, that they're pretty obvious. Obviously, the top of the list has to be the destruction of our home, of the planet, but also of various strange things like destroying other cultures, destroying our own civilization, turning ourselves into machines. I'm very alarmed at the speed with which mechanistic thinking and machine-like thinking is taking over in everyday life, not necessarily in, strange areas of academia or something, but actually the business of leading a life now depends on your adopting a rather machine-like way of being. And we're encouraged, all of us, to think of ourselves as slightly faulty machines, because we've got emotions and bodies and things like that, which computers are not handicapped by. So all of that, and the lust for power and control, which is extremely worrying and accelerating apace, and the means whereby to acquire it by people who have little wisdom in how to use it. So this is the sort of setting. And for those of you who've read The Master and His Emissary, you'll know that rings bells for anyone who knows about the evolution of brain systems, effectively the main two systems being those that are physically and philosophically divided, the right and left hemispheres, because one of them is designed to enable us to control and manipulate, but not really to understand. That's the left hemisphere. And the right hemisphere is the one that helps us to understand everything, however subtle and complex, in context. And I just felt that we were running so far towards what I predicted in The Master and His Emissary, a culture which was dependent almost entirely on ways of thinking typical of the left hemisphere. That was part of it.
I was thinking that the obsession with robots at the moment,
yes,
seems to come partly because people have forgotten that we have functions other than robotic ones.
Yes, it's one of those self-fulfilling things. The more you define what is valuable as what a machine can do, the less you value the humanity. I've written a book which aims to redress this terrible, destructive, lemming-like rush towards our destruction through embracing a view that we and the cosmos are nothing but a heap of rubbish. I'm a scientist, so I'm further worried by the way in which pop science and sort of popular philosophical discourse rushes to embrace a kind of very simplistic model, which is that of reductionist materialism, that there really only is matter, and in order to understand it, you take it apart and find what the bits are. You take it all apart, you find a handful of dust. You say, well, it doesn't mean anything. Well, yes, but it's slightly like taking a wonderful piece of music and listing all the notes in a notebook in order, alphabetically. And then say, well, we've got all the notes here, but I'm damned if I can see if it means anything at all. So that's also a concern, and that is not compelled on us. That view, that intellectually simplistic, morally damaging and spiritually bankrupt way of looking at the world is not entailed on us by anything in science. It's not entailed on us by reason. It's entailed on us by a very left hemisphere, very simple, very procedural vision of what science is and what reason is.
It's almost as though most scientists, especially biologists and psychologists, are not aware that physics changed completely in 1920.
Absolutely. And am I not right? Did you not start out reading physics at Cambridge?
I went to Cambridge. I got in on physics.
Oh, you got in on
physics. And then I discovered that some of the students coming to Cambridge to do physics were actually interested in it. And it occurred to me this gave them an unfair advantage. So I said, what can I do? And they said, very little, because you don't have the A-levels. You can do law. And I said, all right, I'll do law. Yeah, I did that for 3 years and escaped immediately afterwards.
When you discovered that actually you could make people laugh.
Yes, that's right, which was the first time I'd ever discovered I had any creative ability at all, which fascinates me.
Yes.
And I've written this little book about creativity, and the people least interested in it are educationalists.
Yes.
I wrote to Bath, where I have a connection with the university, and I offered them twice to do talks to the students, remote talks,
yes.
And never heard back from them on either offer. And what is that about? But then,
I think you're too woke, probably, John. I think you're probably too woke for them. But no, I mean, going back to physics, physics is so important. And there's a strange paradox that those scientists who study the inanimate world long ago, over 100 years ago, abandoned this mid-19th century mechanistic model, have discovered that the universe is very complex and subtle, that matter is at least as complex as consciousness, and they're probably, almost certainly, interdependent elements.
And Max Planck said that mind came first.
He wasn't the only one, no, but Planck stated, yes, that consciousness is primary. And there are a lot of physicists who certainly would hold that, not a physicist, of course, but I am interested in physics, and I have some kind friends who are physicists who sort of vet my maunderings in this direction. But
Boring.
Get into the car. You may think that the good mood will persist. Maybe a few minutes into the drive, they start criticizing you. They'll say things like, well, why didn't you talk to my mother longer? Or, you didn't have my back when that guy was talking to me. Or, next time, don't make a joke. You sound like an idiot. Or they say something like, you weren't really that nice to my boss. That would have helped. Don't you want me to get that promotion? And you may do a double or even a triple take. You might have thought, they were so warm and lovely, and I thought the evening went well. The narcissistic person even gave you a compliment in front of the other people. You may have even thought, I look forward to debriefing and talking about the event in the car on the way home. Their conduct may have left you so confused in that car ride home that you may make the mistake of defending or explaining or engaging. Well, you know that that's going to dig the hole deeper. And then you think maybe you were wrong. Maybe I didn't talk to their mother long enough, or maybe I didn't have their back when that guy was talking to them, or maybe I did make an inappropriate joke, or maybe I wasn't nice to the boss, even though none of that was true. You were perfectly fine at all of that. This cycle with a narcissist is going to repeat and repeat. Some days good, some days bad, but more pointedly, they may actually look good in public, or you may observe them on the phone or on a Zoom call with colleagues, and they are nice and seemingly empathic and charming. And then the Zoom call gets turned off, and boom, they yell at you. Right there is all the evidence you need that, yes, they do know what they are doing. If they can turn it on and off like that, then it is intentional and it is conscious. It makes it clear that you are disposable in their lives and that they have very little regard for you. They may give you a BS excuse down the road of, oh, I can just be myself with you. I don't need to put on a show like I do at work. Well, that's still a problem because that means just being themselves means abusing you and saying cruel and impulsive things. I have been struck by how narcissistic people will make sure that there's nobody else on the phone or in the room or that you are not on speaker before they start to rage and manipulate. They'll say, hey, is there anyone on speaker? No. Right? That means they know it's not okay for others to hear their words or their behavior because it would make them look bad. So that means they know it's bad. So many people get lost in the trauma bonded justification of, oh, maybe they don't mean it, or maybe they don't know what they're doing. The mask of narcissism shows us that they do know, and they devalue you so much that they save the worst for you. It's their pronouncement that you are nothing more than a psychological punching bag for them. Narcissistic people are very calculating and savvy and are singularly focused on getting supply. It's their bread, air, and water. So they will shapeshift any which way they need to get it. But they also get exhausted at playing nice. They are not naturally empathic. So if you are someone close to them, a partner, a family member, perhaps somebody who works under them at work, your form of supply is to be their punching bag. Narcissistic people are able to have different behavioral repertoires. They're able to use charm to get supply from people with power or to attract new people, and rage and abuse so they can regulate their exhaustion. And they take that rage and abuse out on the people they take for granted or who activate their shame. They know, the narcissists know what bad behavior is, but will sometimes get so emboldened that they will yell and scream and rage and abuse until someone calls them out on it looking bad, which is why they typically try to do it with nobody looking. So the next time you wonder to yourself, well, maybe they don't know what they're doing, ask yourself, were they able to be charming with other people? And then when those people were gone, were they able to rage at or criticize me? The answer to that is yes. Then they know exactly what they are doing. And they are choosing to treat you badly because they believe they can. I hope that clears that up. So if you did find this video helpful, please give it that thumbs up. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Let's keep this community growing. Thanks again.
I don't get it. But they don't want them to have food. They just want to have food. They want to eat it while somebody else who doesn't have food sits there and watches them intently. I'm like, I don't get it. What is that? So that's fucked up. You guys are fucked up. All of you are fucked up. Gluttonous fucking moron. And this is why the human race needs things like the Bible. You literally need it to tell people these are 10 things you can't fucking do. No. Otherwise, you don't get to be called human. But fucking trailers like fucking garbage. Fine.
Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci. Uber's the most ethically challenged company in Silicon Valley. The story of Uber begins on a winter's night in Paris in 2008. Two friends, Travis and Garrett, stood waiting for a taxi, which was late. They were cold, frustrated, and wondering if their cab was ever going to show up at all. But as with any good entrepreneurs, every problem is a potential opportunity. That night in Paris planted a seed in their minds that would lead to $1 billion empire. But this is not your typical business story. The story of Uber is littered with scandals and controversy at every single turn. Because whilst the idea for Uber was in many ways revolutionary, it was also illegal. Travis Kalanick faced relentless bullying when he was young and often threw himself into his work as an escape. As a teenager, he sold kitchen knives in his local neighborhood, cold calling door to door and honing his natural sales skills, a talent that would later prove invaluable in helping him pitch investors for money. But before starting Uber, Travis had dropped out of college to work on another entrepreneurial venture called Scour, a peer-to-peer search engine for files that was a little like Napster. And just like Napster, it would get sued into oblivion. Scour got sued for $250 billion because of copyright infringements, meaning the company had to declare bankruptcy. Travis was bitter about this and went on to start what he calls a revenge business. The name of the company is called Red Swoosh. The idea was the same peer-to-peer technology, but I take those 33 litigants that sued me and turn them into customers. So now those dudes who sued me are now paying me. Travis would eventually sell this business for millions of dollars, giving him the money needed to start an even bigger project, Uber. Travis and his friend Garrett had become increasingly frustrated with taxi companies and figured there had to be a better alternative. But it was actually during a James Bond movie that the idea for Uber came to them. In one scene, Bond tracked a car across a map using his phone. And this would form the basis of their new app, which was originally called Uber Cab and launched publicly in 2010 in San Francisco. Uber Cab aimed to solve the problems of a traditional taxi experience. Firstly, you could order an Uber with the touch of a button on your phone rather than calling someone. Secondly, you could watch the car's journey across the map, so you knew its way and how long it would take. Thirdly, Uber had luxury black cars with leather interiors, which would show up spotless, complete with chill bottles of water in the back. And finally, the payment would be seamless. The ride would be automatically charged to your card, so you didn't have to mess about with change or a tip. In other words, it was originally a luxury black cab and limousine service to give you a small taste of the James Bond experience. And thus, getting an Uber quickly became a status symbol in the wealthy San Francisco area. It was a great start for the company, at least for the first few months. Then, October 20th, the transportation agency showed up at Uber's offices and informed them that what they were doing was against the law. Now, at this point, all of Uber's drivers were licensed professional drivers, registered with local transportation offices. So Uber felt this was incredibly harsh. But apparently, there were strict rules about running a taxi business, and Uber was breaking them. One element of this was that Uber didn't actually own the cars themselves. They were getting professional drivers to use their own cars, which saved Uber huge amounts of money, but created some legal issues. The local authorities told them for every day Uber Cab was in operation, the company faced fines of up to $5,000 per trip. Not just that, but they said the Uber team could face up to 90 days in jail for each day that the company remained operational. The small Uber team was both devastated and terrified. Most of them were in their 20s, some had just come straight from college, and now they were being threatened with fines and potential jail time. One of them nervously asked, "What do we do?" But one man wasn't worried. Travis Kalanick, Uber co-founder and CEO, told the others confidently, "We do nothing. We ignore it." He went on to say that they'd simply drop the cab part of their name and just be known as Uber. He announced, "We're not a taxi company, we're a technology company, so these rules and regulations don't apply." Travis would frequently come up with creative definitions like this that would save the company billions of dollars, but create a lot of controversy. For example, he also said that drivers of Uber weren't employees, they were partners, thus meaning Uber didn't have to give them employment rights or benefits. Of course, Travis knew the authorities were unlikely to see his way of thinking on these issues. So, he prepared for war. Travis knew that if he could get enough people using the Uber app, they'd see it was a better way to travel. And at that point, the authorities wouldn't be able to shut them down without facing huge public backlash. But they had to move quickly. So, Uber struck a deal with AT&T to buy thousands of iPhones in bulk at a discounted price. They would then hand these out to drivers pre-programmed to run Uber's software. They also offered them cash bonuses for completing a certain number of trips per week. This immediately brought lots of new drivers onto their network very quickly. Then, to get riders, Uber offered to give away the first trip completely free. After all, who wouldn't want a free taxi ride? Uber would then give the second and third trip away at a discounted price to encourage them to use the service again, believing that if someone had tried it a few times, they'd see the value and be willing to pay full price in future. This strategy was incredibly expensive, since the company lost money on every ride. But it paid off, because soon many people started exclusively using Uber instead of normal taxis. And then Uber began expanding into other cities by replicating this same strategy, offering generous promotions up front along with referral bonuses, so the app became popular very quickly, meaning that by the time the city's authorities started questioning what Uber was doing and whether it was even allowed, they already had a loyal, active user base. Then, whenever local authorities threatened them, Uber would send out alerts to users on the app with a button to easily sign a petition supporting Uber.